Mogadishu, October 3, 1993. The air tastes like burning rubber and human fear. Somewhere in a labyrinth of bullet-scarred streets, a 19-year-old recruit with hints that have never pulled a trigger on a living soul is about to discover that heroes are not born, they are forged in the furnace of impossible choices. This is not a story about war. This is a story about the moment a boy becomes a legend and the price the universe demands for such transformation. What you are about to witness will make you question everything you believed about courage, about destiny, and about the thin line between survival and sacrifice. By the time the sun rises over the Bakar market, nothing will ever be the same. Not for Marcus Coleman, not for the men who followed him into hell, and not for you. In war, the moral is to the physical as 3 is to 1. Napoleon Bonaparte, the helicopter rotor sliced through air thick with heat and prophecy. Private First Class Marcus Coleman pressed his spine against the vibrating metal floor of the Black Hawk, feeling the machine's heartbeat merge with his own terrified pulse. 95 degrees. The temperature branded itself into his skin like a cattle iron, but it was the cold in his stomach that made him want to vomit. Around him, the Rangers checked their weapons for the 100th time, magazines seated, safeties off, prayers whispered between clenched teeth. Through the open door, Mogadishu spread beneath them like a wound that refused to heal. Buildings with their guts exposed to the sky. Streets that twisted like the intestines of some dying beast. And somewhere down there, in that maze of shadows and shattered concrete, 17 hours of hell waited to be born. Marcus's hands trembled. He squeezed his M16 tighter, praying no one noticed. The barrel felt wrong in his grip, too heavy, too real, too much like the instrument of death it truly was. He had fired thousands of rounds in training. Paper targets, wooden silhouettes, things that didn't bleed, things that didn't have mothers waiting for them to come home. Staff Sergeant Raymond Prophet Washington sat across from him, eyes closed, lips moving in silent prayer. At 38 years old, Prophet had seen enough combat to fill a graveyard. His massive frame seemed to absorb the helicopter's vibrations, as if he and the machine had reached some ancient understanding. The burn scar on his neck caught the harsh afternoon light, a souvenir from a helicopter crash in Panama, 1989. 4 men died that day. Prophet walked out of the flames. He never explained how. When he opened his eyes, they found Marcus immediately, as if drawn by magnetic force. Something passed between them, recognition, perhaps, or warning. The old soldier's gaze held knowledge that Marcus couldn't decode. A secret written in a language spoken only by those who have touched death and been sent back. 5 disturbing details branded themselves into Marcus's memory in rapid succession. First, the smell of burning garbage mixed with something sweeter. Something that his brain refused to identify, but his gut recognized as decay. Second, the way the sunlight fell through the helicopter door in bars, like the stripes of a cage. Third, the photograph of his 7-year-old sister Destiny pressing against his chest. Her smile, a lighthouse beam cutting through his darkness. Fourth, the missing tip of Prophet's left ring finger, lost to a machete in some jungle operation he never discussed, twitching now as if sensing what was coming. Fifth, and most disturbing of all, the mansion. Through the helicopter's window, impossibly, Marcus saw a mansion standing pristine among the rubble. White columns, manicured gardens. A house that had no business existing in this apocalyptic landscape. But when he blinked, it was gone, replaced by the skeletal frame of a bombed-out warehouse. Had he imagined it? Was his mind already fracturing before the mission had even begun? The loadmaster's voice crackled through the headset. 2 minutes. 2 minutes until they fast-roped into the Olympic Hotel district. 2 minutes until the most complex urban combat operation since Vietnam unfolded around them. 2 minutes until history reached out with bloody fingers and claimed them all. Marcus thought about running. Not physically, there was nowhere to go at 200 feet above a hostile city, but mentally. He could retreat into that quiet place in his head where his mother still lived, where her voice still sang hymns on Sunday mornings, where the world was small and safe and made sense. But then Prophet leaned forward and spoke, his voice somehow cutting through the rotor wash without rising above a murmur. I know what you're thinking, babyface. Every soldier thinks it before his first kill. But here's the truth, it's not about being ready. Nobody's ever ready. It's about choosing. When the moment comes, you choose who you're going to be. And once you make that choice, there's no going back. How did he know? How could this scarred warrior possibly know the secret shame that Marcus had carried across an ocean, into a war zone, into this mail coffin hurtling toward destiny? The question had no time to form itself into words. The black hawk lurched, the ropes dropped, and suddenly Marcus was sliding into the mouth of madness. His boots hit the dusty street, and the world exploded into noise and fire and screaming. But strangest of all, in that first chaotic moment of contact, Marcus saw him a figure standing calmly in a doorway across the street, an American soldier in full combat gear, watching the chaos unfold with the detached interest of someone observing fish in an aquarium. The figure smiled at Marcus, nodded once, then pointed down an alley that seemed to glow with strange light. Before Marcus could process what he was seeing, the figure vanished, not retreated, not moved, simply ceased to exist, like a candle flame snuffed by invisible fingers. Madness or message, ghost or guardian? The question would haunt Marcus through the 17 hours of hell that followed. 3 blocks away, invisible in the shadow of a ruined minaret, a man with one blind eye pressed his good eye to the scope of a Dragunov sniper rifle. Abdullahi the Phantom Hassan had been watching the helicopters circle for 20 minutes, reading their patterns, calculating their descent points, planning the slaughter with the cold precision of a chess master arranging pieces for checkmate. The necklace of 6 to 7 spent casings hung heavy around his weathered neck, one for each American, Ethiopian, and peacekeeping soldier he had sent to meet their ancestors. Today, he would add to that number. He murmured to his dead daughter, asking permission, as he always did. The wind carried no answer, but he felt her presence, somewhere between his trigger finger and his shattered heart, blessing the death he was about to deal. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Destiny had placed a trembling recruit directly in his crosshairs. And Destiny, that ancient trickster, had plans that would rewrite everything both men believed about fate, about war, and about the terrible mathematics of sacrifice. Courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the judgment that something else is more important than fear. Ambrose Red Moon, the bullet that would have taken Marcus Coleman's life, in the first 30 seconds of combat, passed close enough to kiss his left ear, before burying itself in the wall behind him. Time fractured. The world became a series of disconnected images, muzzle flashes blooming from darkened windows. Like deadly flowers, the ranger beside him folding in half as rounds punched through his body armor at a seam. Prophet's massive hand closing around Marcus's shoulder and hauling him sideways into an alcove. Contact left, contact right, contact everywhere. Someone was screaming into the radio. The Olympic Hotel loomed above them, their objective. The building where ID's lieutenants were supposedly meeting, getting their required crossing 70 meters of open ground. That had suddenly become the most dangerous real estate on Earth. Marcus pressed his back against the wall and tried to remember how to breathe. His training screamed at him to return fire, to locate targets, to be a soldier. But his fingers felt frozen on the trigger guard, his eyes unable to track the chaos fast enough to make sense of it. Babyface. Prophet's voice cut through the noise like a blade. You see that alley? 10 o'clock. Marcus forced his head to turn. There was the same alley the phantom soldier had pointed to. It glowed with that strange light again, a golden path through the hell. Except that was impossible. Alleys didn't glow. There was no light source. His mind was playing tricks on him. I see it, Marcus heard himself say. Good. When I give the word, you move. Don't stop. Don't look back. Whatever happens behind you, just keep moving. Prophet's hand squeezed once a father's grip, firm and final. And Marcus? I saw him too. The soldier in the doorway. I've seen him before, in other places, other battles. He only appears when something important is about to happen. Before Marcus could ask what that meant, Prophet was up and moving, laying down covering fire with mechanical precision, his massive frame absorbing the attention of every hostile gun in the vicinity. Marcus ran. The alley swallowed him whole. Here, strangely, the sounds of combat seemed distant, muffled by the crumbling walls that rose on either side like canyon cliffs. Marcus's boots splashed through something wet. He refused to look down, refused to know what fluid soaked this ground. The golden glow had vanished the moment he entered, replaced by ordinary shadow and the stench of rot. But something else had taken its place, a sense of being watched. Not by enemy fighters. This felt different, older, more patient. He emerged into a small courtyard and stopped dead. In the center, impossibly, sat a woman, Somali, elderly, dressed in bright fabrics that had no place in a war zone. She was sifting through a bowl of grain, picking out stones and chaff, completely absorbed in her work. The sounds of gunfire and explosions might as well have been birdsong, for all the attention she paid them. When she looked up at Marcus, her eyes were the milky white of cataracts, completely blind, and yet she seemed to see straight through him. "You are the one," she said in perfect English. "The boy who will make the impossible choice." Marcus wanted to respond, wanted to ask what she meant, wanted to understand how an elderly blind woman was sitting calmly in a courtyard while the world burned around her. But his mouth produced no words. The woman smiled a grandmother's smile, warm and slightly sad. "Go through the blue door. It will take you where you need to be. And when the moment comes, remember, the smallest hands can move the largest stones." She pointed to her left, where a blue door stood in the wall. Marcus blinked. The door hadn't been there a moment ago. He was certain of it. The wall had been solid, unbroken. Now a door, painted that particular shade of Mediterranean blue, waited for him to make a choice. He reached for the handle, his rational mind screaming that this was insane, that doors didn't appear from nothing, that blind women didn't speak prophecies in war zones. The handle was cool against his palm, real solid. He pushed, and the door swung open onto chaos. Pure, undiluted chaos. He had somehow emerged behind the enemy position that had been pinning down his squad. 6 Somali militia members crouched behind a waist-high wall, their backs to Marcus, a K-47 spitting fire at the Rangers trying to advance up the street. Time slowed to honey. Every detail became crystalline, the sweat stains on the back of one fighter's shirt, shaped like a butterfly, the way sunlight caught the ejecting brass casings, turning them into golden sparks. The prayer beads wrapped around another fighter's gun hand, clicking softly with each trigger pull. Marcus raised his M16, center mass on the nearest target. His finger found the trigger. This was the moment. This was the choice Prophet had spoken about. 6 lives hung in the balance, their lives or his brother's lives. Simple mathematics, easy calculus. Pull the trigger. Save your squad. Become a soldier. But his finger wouldn't move. Couldn't move. Every training exercise, every drill instructor screaming in his face, every lecture about warrior ethos and combat readiness, all of it dissolved into white noise. Because behind that nearest target, propped against the wall, sat a child's toy, a stuffed rabbit, dirty and worn, obviously loved. Someone's father was trying to kill Marcus's brothers. Someone's father might never go home to that child. And Marcus, 19 years old, raised in violence, but never having dealt it, found himself frozen in the longest moment of his life. The soldier is also a citizen. In fact, the highest obligation and privilege of citizenship is that of bearing arms for one's country. George S. Patton, the decision that Marcus Coleman could not make was made for him. One of the militia fighters turned, perhaps sensing the presence behind him, and their eyes met across 3 meters of blood-soaked ground. The man was young, maybe 22, 23, with a face that might have been handsome before war had carved it into something harder. For one eternal second, they stared at each other, 2 young men on opposite sides of a conflict neither fully understood, both products of violence, both terrified, both struggling to do what they believed was right. The fighter's AK-47 began to swing toward Marcus, and suddenly, Marcus's paralysis shattered. Not from training, not from duty, from something far more primal, the desperate, animal need to survive. His finger found the trigger. The M16 barked 3 times. The young fighter collapsed. 5 others spun at the sound, weapons rising, death in their eyes. Marcus was already moving, the weapon an extension of his body now, muscle memory taking over where conscious thought had failed. 3 more went down in rapid succession. The 4th threw himself behind the wall. The fifth was running. Not toward Marcus, not toward a weapon, just running, a man who had decided that whatever cause he was fighting for wasn't worth dying today. Marcus's sights tracked him automatically. His finger began to squeeze and stopped. The runner wasn't a threat. The runner was just a man trying to survive. Marcus let him go. Later, other soldiers would question that decision. You let him go. He could have doubled back. He could have told others where you were. He could have gotten Americans killed. But in that moment, Marcus knew with bone-deep certainty that pulling that trigger would have been murder, not combat. There's a line, invisible but iron solid, that separates killing in war from killing in cold blood. Marcus had found that line and refused to cross it, even if it cost him everything. The courtyard fell silent except for the distant thunder of combat. Marcus stood among the fallen, his chest heaving, his hands shaking, his soul screaming. He had killed for men who would never go home. For men whose families would never understand why. For men who might have been fathers, brothers, sons just like him. The stuffed rabbit lay in a pool of blood that crept slowly toward it, staining its worn fur pink. Marcus walked to it, picked it up, and carefully placed it in a dry spot away from the carnage. A meaningless gesture, a futile attempt to preserve some fragment of innocence in a place where innocence had long since been executed. But he did it anyway, because it was all he could do. Babyface, Marcus, anyone on this net? Prophet's voice crackled through the radio. Marcus keyed the handset with fingers that felt like they belonged to someone else. I'm here. I'm behind the enemy position. The one that was pinning you down. A pause. Then, say again. You're where? Behind them. There. They're not a threat anymore. Another pause, longer this time. When Prophet spoke again, his voice had changed softer, knowing. Copy. Hold position. We're coming to you. Marcus sat down heavily against the wall, weapon across his lap, staring at the bodies of the men he had killed. His first kills, the moment he had dreaded for months, imagined in countless nightmares, prepared for in 1,000 ways that turned out to be useless. He waited for the guilt, waited for the horror, waited for his conscience to tear him apart. Instead, he felt hollow, empty, as if the bullets hadn't just passed through those men, but through something essential in Marcus himself, leaving a hole where certainty used to live. The phantom soldier appeared again. He stood across the courtyard, in the shadow of a collapsed balcony, watching Marcus with an expression of profound sorrow. This time, Marcus could see details. The man wore desert camouflage from a different era, carried an M1 Garand rifle, and had sergeant's stripes faded almost to invisibility. Most striking were his eyes. They held the weight of wars beyond counting, battles from before Marcus's father was born. You did well, the phantom said. His voice came from everywhere and nowhere, less heard than felt. But this was only the beginning. The true test is coming. When it does, remember, glory is not found in the bullets you fire, but in the brothers you save. Marcus blinked, and the phantom was gone. Where he had stood, a single rifle round lay on the ground pristine, unfired, catching the light like a small golden promise, or threat. Marcus had no idea which. Only the dead have seen the end of war. Plato's Staff Sergeant Raymond Washington had been praying for death for 3 months. Not openly, that would have been weakness. Not dramatically, that would have been theater. Just quietly, in the small hours before dawn, when his rack in the Mogadishu compound felt too much like a coffin for comfort. He prayed for an end that would have meaning. He prayed to trade his tired, grief-heavy life for something worth the exchange. His wife had died 2 years earlier, consumed by a cancer that laughed at medicine. His son had stopped speaking to him after the funeral, blaming Prophet for every missed birthday, every empty seat at school events, every promise broken in service of a country that had no idea the sacrifices his family made. Prophet had given everything to the army. Now he had nothing left to give except his life. The visions had started 3 months ago, the same night he first saw the phantom soldier. He had been standing guard duty, staring into the Somali darkness, when the figure materialized beside him. No alarm, no threat, just a presence, patient and ancient. The phantom showed Prophet things, images of a battle not yet fought, a young soldier with a face too soft for war, a moment of decision that would echo through eternity. And in every vision, Prophet saw himself fall, saw the rounds punch through his vest, saw his own blood steaming on the dusty ground, saw Marcus Coleman, a recruit he hadn't yet met, kneeling over his body, transformed by loss into something greater than himself. Prophet had always believed he could sense death coming. In Panama, he had felt its approach an hour before the helicopter crash. In Iraq, he had pulled his patrol back 30 seconds before a bomb detonated where they would have been standing. But this was different. This wasn't sensing death, this was knowing it, accepting it, even welcoming it if it served a purpose larger than his own tired existence. Now, watching Marcus emerge from that courtyard with the 1,000-yard stare of a man who had crossed an irreversible threshold, Prophet felt the pieces of the prophecy clicking into place. This boy, this trembling, uncertain, somehow extraordinary boy was the purpose Prophet had been searching for. Not to die for a flag or a country or an ideal, but for something even simpler, the chance to pass the torch to the next generation. The chance to ensure that everything Prophet had learned in 18 years of combat wouldn't die with him. The chance to matter. Prophet approached the courtyard slowly, signaling his squad to secure the perimeter. He didn't need to look at the bodies to understand what had happened. The positioning told the story. For clean kills, one escaped, and Mark is still alive against all odds. You let one go, Prophet observed quietly. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement. He was running away. Marcus's voice was hollow. He wasn't a threat. A lot of soldiers would have killed him anyway. Fog of war. Heat of the moment. I'm not a lot of soldiers. Prophet nodded slowly. No, you're not. He reached down and pulled Marcus to his feet, holding him steady until the young man's legs remembered how to function. What you did here, the kills and the mercy, that's not something they teach at Fort Benning. That's instinct. That's character. That's the difference between a soldier and a warrior. Marcus started to respond, but the radio crackled with urgent traffic. All units, Super 6-1 is down. I repeat, Black Hawk down at the cave for circle. Mass casualties. We need every available unit to establish a perimeter. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. A Black Hawk down. In hostile territory. With the crew trapped inside and an enemy that would stop at nothing to reach them. Prophet and Marcus looked at each other, and in that look, both understood that everything was about to change. The streets of Mogadishu had been deadly before. Now they would become something worse. Every militiaman, every street fighter, every armed citizen would converge on that crash site like sharks to blood. The American forces designed for a quick surgical strike were about to face the full fury of a city that had been waiting for exactly this moment. Prophet closed his eyes for one brief second. In the darkness behind his lids, he saw the vision again, his own body on the ground, his blood soaking the dust, and Marcus Coleman standing over him with fire in his eyes. Not today, he thought, but soon, very soon. It is well that war is so terrible, otherwise we should grow fond of it. Robert E. Lee. The distance between their position and the crash site measured approximately 800 meters, less than half a mile. In training, Marcus could cover that ground in under 4 minutes. In Mogadishu, it might as well have been 800 miles. Every intersection was a kill zone. Every rooftop hid potential snipers. Every alley could conceal an ambush. They moved in a tactical column, Prophet on point, Marcus in the middle, 7 other rangers spread out behind them. The original objective, the meeting at the Olympic Hotel, had been abandoned. All that mattered now was reaching their fallen brothers before the enemy did. The sounds of battle intensified. With every block they covered, RPGs screamed overhead, trailing smoke like comets of death. Small, arms fire crackled from every direction, creating a constant, disorienting symphony of violence. The smell of cordite mixed with burning vehicles, cooking meat, and something sweeter, the terrible perfume of open bodies. Prophet raised his fist to signal the halt. The squad froze, weapons up, eyes scanning. Ahead, the street was too quiet. A marketplace spilled across the road, stalls overturned, vegetables rotting in the afternoon heat. No movement, no sound. In a city this chaotic, stillness meant only one thing: ambush. I see them, Prophet murmured. 3rd floor, building on the right. 2 shooters. They're waiting for us to move into the open. Marcus squinted, but saw nothing. Just empty windows and shadow. How could Prophet possibly? But he remembered the stories. The man could sense death coming, could feel danger before it materialized. Some kind of sixth sense honed by decades of surviving the unsurvivable. There's another group, Prophet continued, left side, behind that burned-out truck. At least 4. He paused, calculating. And somewhere up high, a sniper. I can feel him watching. He hasn't shot because he's waiting for a better target, someone important. Marcus felt the weight of that invisible sniper's gaze. Felt it like cold water running down his spine. Somewhere out there, crosshairs were tracking them, waiting for the perfect moment. The phantom soldier appeared again, not to Marcus this time, but visible to the entire squad. He stood in the center of the marketplace, untouched by the danger around him, and pointed to a doorway on their right. One by one, the rangers saw him. One by one, their faces went pale. What the hell is that? Someone whispered. Don't know, Prophet replied, already moving toward the door. Don't care. But he's been right every time so far. Move. They moved. The doorway led into a narrow passage that wound through the guts of the building rooms. Stripped of everything valuable, staircases missing half their steps, holes in floors that dropped into darkness. But the passage was clear. No enemies, no ambushes. The phantom had guided them through a safe corridor that no tactician could have predicted. They emerged on the other side of the kill zone, the crash site now visible, the blocks ahead. The Black Hawk lay crumpled like a broken bird, smoke still rising from its engines. Around it, a perimeter of Rangers and Delta operators fought desperately against waves of militia that seemed to multiply with every passing minute. And in the streets beyond, Marcus saw something that made his heart stop. The runner. The man he had let live in the courtyard. Now that man was leading a group of fresh fighters toward the crash site, AK-47 in hand, clearly in command. Marcus had shown mercy. Now that mercy was going to get Americans killed. The guilt hit him like a physical blow. He had made the choice he believed was right, and now he was watching the consequences unfold in real time. Every enemy fighter that runner led toward the crash site was blood on Marcus's hands. Every American they wounded or killed. No. Prophet's voice cut through Marcus's spiral. Don't do that. Don't play the what-if game. You made a moral choice in an impossible situation. Whatever happens next, that choice was still right. But no buts. You didn't have perfect information. You couldn't have known. And even if you had known, sparing a fleeing man's life was still the right thing to do. War doesn't demand that we become monsters, Marcus. It demands that we remain human, even when everything around us is designed to strip our humanity away. Prophet clapped him on the shoulder. Now move. Our brothers need us, and the only way to help them is to be effective. Guilt is a luxury we can't afford right now. Pack it away. Feel it later. Right now, be a warrior. Marcus nodded, something hard crystallizing in his chest. The guilt didn't disappear, it was simply compartmentalized, locked away in a box labeled later that would eventually demand to be opened. But for now, in this moment, Prophet was right. There was only the mission. There was only the brotherhood. There was only the next step, the next breath, the next chance to make a difference. I have not yet begun to fight. John Paul Jones, 800 meters away, at 40 feet above street level, Abdullahi the Phantom Hassan adjusted his scope and watched the American squad approach the crash site. His good eye, the only one left working after a childhood accident with a slingshot, was the most feared instrument in Mogadishu. Through that eye had passed the final images of 6 to 7 enemy soldiers. Through that scope had traveled bullets that changed the course of battles. Now it tracked a young American with a face to soft for war and an older American, who moved like someone who had accepted his death. Abdullahi's finger rested on the trigger, but he did not fire. Not yet. He was waiting for the perfect moment, the shot that would break the enemy's spirit, that would send ripples of terror through their ranks. Killing a young soldier was effective. Killing a leader in front of his men was devastating. He recognized the older soldier's body language, the confidence, the awareness, the way he positioned himself slightly ahead of the others. A sergeant, at least, maybe higher. This one was valuable. This one would be his target. But something was wrong. As Abdullahi tracked the squad through his scope, he noticed the older American stop and looked directly at him. Impossible. Abdullahi was perfectly concealed, in deep shadow, making no movement that could reveal his position. And yet this soldier was staring at him as if they were standing face to face. Their eyes met across 800 meters of war-torn city, the sniper and his target, predator and prey, death and its agent. The American smiled. Not a smile of fear or challenge, but something else entirely. Something that looked almost like recognition, like acceptance, like greeting. Abdullahi's finger trembled on the trigger. In 20 years of killing, he had never hesitated like this. His targets had been faceless enemies, bodies to be eliminated, obstacles to be removed. But this target, this strange, knowing target, felt different. He felt like someone Abdullahi had met before, in some other life, some other war. He felt like family. The thought was absurd. Abdullahi shook it off, steadied his breathing, prepared the shot. The American was still looking at him, still smiling, still waiting. Come on then. That smile seemed to say, do what you came to do. I'm ready. He squeezed the trigger. At the exact moment of the shot, a rocket-propelled grenade detonated against the building 20 meters from Abdullahi's position. The shockwave threw off his aim by millimeters, enough, at 800 meters, to turn a kill shot into a miss. The round cracked past the American sergeant's ear and buried itself in the wall behind him. Abdullahi cursed and worked the bolt, chambering another round. But when he looked through the scope again, the American squad had vanished, melted into the urban terrain like ghosts. Only then did Abdullahi notice the figure standing in the street below his position. A soldier in old-style American uniform, carrying an antique rifle, watching him with eyes that held the weight of every war ever fought. The figure raised one hand in what might have been a salute or a warning. Then he was gone, as if he had never been there at all. Abdullahi felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear. Not fear of death, he had made peace with that long ago, but fear of something else. Fear of the supernatural. Fear of whatever force was moving pieces on this chessboard. Fear that maybe, just maybe, he was no longer in control of his own fate. He murmured a prayer to his dead daughter, but for the first time, her presence felt distant, as if she, too, was watching something larger unfold, something beyond a simple battle between nations, something that touched the eternal. In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. Sun Tzu, the perimeter around Super 6-1 was a circle of hell defended by angels in body armor. Marcus and his squad reached the line just as a wave of militia fighters broke against the American defenses like water against rock. The noise was indescribable, not just gunfire, but screaming, explosions, the crackle of burning vehicles, the desperate shouts of the wounded calling for medics. The Black Hawk lay on its side, rotor snapped, cockpit crushed. Somewhere inside that twisted metal, pilots were still alive, crew chiefs were still fighting, and every minute that passed without extraction brought them closer to death. Prophet found the ranking officer, a captain with blood on his face and fire in his eyes, and got the situation briefing in 30 seconds flat. 19 Americans dead or wounded. RPGs coming from 3 directions. Sniper fire making movement impossible. The rescue convoy was pinned down 6 blocks away. No air support available. The remaining helicopters were dealing with a second crash site across the city. They were on their own. We need to hold until nightfall, the captain said. Then we try to move on foot. Prophet shook his head. They'll overrun us before then. We need to thin out that RPG threat. Can't hold a perimeter when rockets are landing every 30 seconds. The captain's expression said everything. He knew Prophet was right, but he had no solution. The RPG teams were positioned in elevated buildings with clear sightlines, protected by scores of fighters. Every attempt to assault those positions had been thrown back with casualties. I'll go. The words left Marcus's mouth before he could stop them. Every eye turned to look at the young recruit with the soft face and the shaking hands. You'll what? The captain asked, disbelief coloring his voice. The blue door led me behind them before. Maybe I can find a way again. He knew how insane it sounded. Blue doors that appeared from nowhere. Phantom soldiers guiding him through the maze. An old blind woman speaking prophecies. If he said any of that out loud, they would think he had lost his mind. But Prophet was looking at him with something like pride. He's not crazy, Prophet said quietly. I've seen it too. There's something helping us. Something I don't understand. But Babyface has a connection to it that I don't. If he says he can find a way, I believe him. The captain looked between them, trying to decide if his entire command had gone insane. The choice was stolen from him by another RPG detonating against their perimeter, showering them all with debris. Fine, the captain shouted. Go, take whoever you need. But if you're not back in 30 minutes, I'm assuming you're dead and we're executing Plan B. Marcus didn't ask what Plan B was. He had a feeling he didn't want to know. He grabbed the other Rangers' men whose names he barely knew but whose willingness to follow was written in their eyes and headed toward the buildings, searching for a way through the impossible. Prophet watched him go, feeling the vision pulse stronger in his mind. Soon now. Very soon, the moment would come. He checked his magazine, ensured a round was chambered, and took up position on the perimeter facing the heaviest enemy fire. If Marcus's plan failed, Prophet would buy them time. However much time his body and his bullets could purchase. It would be enough. It had to be enough. In his pocket, next to his heart, the photograph of his estranged son pressed against his chest. He had written a letter last night, the kind of letter soldiers write when they know they might not be coming home. He had entrusted it to a chaplain with instructions to mail it if Prophet didn't survive the day. In that letter, he had said all the things he should have said in person. I'm sorry. I love you. I was wrong. Be better than I was. Maybe the words would reach his son. Maybe they would bring healing to a wound Prophet had caused through years of absence. Or maybe they would be thrown away, unread, by a young man to hurt to forgive. Either way, Prophet had said his piece. He had made his confession. Now all that remained was the final act. Never tell people how to do things. Tell them what to do, and they will surprise you with their ingenuity. George S. Patton. The building Marcus entered had been a school. Before the Civil War transformed it into a fortified position, desks still lined the walls, small and built for children, their surfaces carved with names in Somali script, crayon drawings hung on walls pocked with bullet hole stick figures of families, houses with smoking chimneys, the universal images of childhood innocence. And in one corner, inexplicably, a perfectly preserved classroom globe, spinning slowly on its axis as if moved by an invisible hand. Marcus and his Rangers moved through the halls in tactical formation, clearing rooms with professional efficiency. But Marcus's attention was elsewhere, searching for the signs, the impossible geometries, the blue doors and phantom guides that had become his compass in this madness. He found the first anomaly in what had been the principal's office. A door that led to a wall. Not a block door, a door that opened on a solid brick, as if someone had installed it as a joke, or a test, or a warning. Marcus touched the brick, feeling its texture, confirming its reality. Then he turned and saw another door behind him that hadn't been there when he entered. Corporal? One of the Rangers whispered. That door. I know. Marcus's voice was steadier than he felt. Just trust me. The new door was painted the same Mediterranean blue as before. When Marcus opened it, he found not a room, but a staircase descending into darkness. Impossible, they were on the ground floor. There should be nothing below them but foundation and earth. But the staircase was there, undeniable, lit by some sourceless glow that made the walls shimmer like water. We're not really going down there, the second ranger said. It wasn't a question, it was a desperate hope. Stay here if you want, Marcus replied, but I think this is the way. He descended. After a moment of shared terrified glances, the other two followed. The stairs went down 30 steps, then 9, and then stopped counting because counting had become meaningless. By all logic, they should have passed through the Earth's crust by now, should have emerged in some underground chamber of magma and darkness. Instead, they emerged into a corridor that looked exactly like the building above, except reversed, like looking into a mirror. The crayon drawings on the wall showed the same stick figures, but in these versions, the figures had no faces. The desks were overturned. The globe had stopped spinning, and standing at the end of the corridor, waiting for them, was the phantom soldier. You came, he said. His voice echoed strangely, as if coming from multiple directions at once. I wasn't sure you would. Who are you? Marcus asked. What is this place? This place? The phantom gestured at the reverse corridor. This is the space between moments, the gap where decisions haven't been made yet. Very few people ever see it. Even fewer can move through it. He stepped closer, and Marcus saw that his face was weathered beyond age, as if carved by centuries of wind and war. As for who I am, I was a soldier once, like you, in a war that's been over longer than your country has existed. I died protecting my brothers, and something kept me here, gave me purpose beyond death. Why us? Why me? The phantom's ancient eyes held infinite sadness. Because you're standing at the threshold, Marcus Coleman. The choice you make in the next hour will ripple through time like a stone thrown into still water. Men will live or die because of what you do. Wars will be studied differently because of your actions. And a man you love is going to sacrifice himself to protect you, unless you find a way to change the pattern. Marcus felt his blood freeze. Prophet, the vision prophet, had described the death he seemed to be waiting for. How do I stop it? You can't stop it. No one can. But you can make sure his death has meaning. You can make sure the sacrifice creates life instead of just ending it. The phantom pointed to a door at the end of the corridor. Blue, of course. Through there, you'll find the path to the RPG teams. Take them out, and your perimeter holds. Your brothers survive the night. And when the moment comes, when what moment comes? But the phantom was already fading, his form becoming translucent, his voice a whisper from somewhere beyond. You'll know. When you see it, you'll know. And then you'll have to choose. The more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in combat. Richard Marcinko. The blue door opened into the attic of the building, housing the primary RPG team. Marcus and his rangers emerged behind stacked ammunition crates, the sound of their arrival covered by the constant roar of outgoing rockets. Below them, through gaps in the floor, they could see the team working with terrible efficiency, loaders passing rockets to shooters, who fired and reloaded in smooth cycles, raining death on the American perimeter. 6 fighters, 2 RPG launchers. Enough ammunition to maintain fire for hours. Taking them out would give the perimeter the breathing room it desperately needed. But one wrong move would bring the entire building's worth of militia down on them, Marcus signaled his plan in hand gestures, simultaneous silent takedowns on the loaders, then rapid fire on the remaining fighters before they could react. The Rangers nodded. They had been skeptical of their young leader, but something had changed in the impossible basement, some unspoken understanding that Marcus was operating on a level they couldn't comprehend. They were willing to follow. The attack was over in seconds. Marcus and one Ranger dropped through the ceiling onto the loaders, knives finding throats before voices could find screams. The other Ranger opened fire on the shooters from above, controlled bursts that put them down before they could swing their weapons around. Silence, except for the ringing in their ears. 6 more enemies who would never go home. 6 more weights on the scale of Marcus's soul. But this time, the guilt was different lighter. Somehow, these weren't men running away. These were men actively trying to kill his brothers. The moral calculus was cleaner, even if the result was equally bloody. Sergeant Washington, this is Coleman. Primary RPG position is eliminated. Say again, primary RPG position is neutralized. Prophet's voice crackled back, relief and pride fighting for dominance. Copy, baby face. Outstanding work. Now get back here, we've got a second team on the east side making trouble. But Marcus wasn't listening. Through the window of the building, he could see something that made his breath catch. The runner. The man he had spared. The man who had led fighters to the crash site. He was there, in the street below, directing his squad toward a flanking position that would catch the American perimeter completely off guard. And with him, walking calmly through the chaos, was another figure. The sniper, Abdullahi Hassan, the phantom, unmistakable with his weathered face and his necklace of brass casings. The 2 most dangerous enemy combatants on this battlefield were converging on the same target. And that target, Marcus realized with sudden certainty, was Prophet. The runner was spotting for the sniper. The mercy Marcus had shown was about to become the instrument of Prophet's death, unless Marcus could stop it. The phantom soldier's words echoed in his mind. When you see it, you'll know. And then you'll have to choose. He was seeing it now. He was knowing it now. And the choice was becoming clear, terrible and beautiful and impossible, but clear. Stay here, Marcus told his Rangers. Hold this position. Relay fire support coordinates to the command post. Where are you going? To do something stupid. He didn't wait for a response. He was already moving, already running, already descending through the building toward the street and the enemy and the impossible decision that waited there. We sleep safely in our beds because rough men stand ready in the night to visit violence on those who would harm us. George Orwell Abdullahi Hassan found the perfect position. In the burned-out shell of a restaurant, 200 meters from the American perimeter. Through his scope, he could see the big sergeant clearly. Now Prophet, they called him. According to the radio chatter his militia had intercepted, the man stood at the center of the defensive line, directing fire, exposing himself to danger that would have made other soldiers cower. He was exactly the target Abdullahi had been looking for, a leader whose death would shatter morale and create chaos. The runner, a young man named Omar, who Abdullahi had recruited just hours ago, crouched beside him, watching the American lines for any movement. The sergeant, Abdullahi murmured, "You see him?" Omar nodded. "He's the one who let me live. His subordinate, the young one. He had me in his sights and let me go." Abdullahi's good eye narrowed. "And yet you lead us here to kill them. My brother died in the first American raid." Omar's voice held no conflict. "My cousin died in the second. The young American showed me mercy, and I will remember that when I speak to my ancestors. But war does not run on mercy. It runs on blood." Abdullahi nodded slowly. He understood this calculus, had lived it for 20 years. You could respect your enemy, even admire them, and still do what were required. The Americans were not evil. They were simply on the wrong side of history, in the wrong place, trying to impose order on a chaos they didn't understand. They deserved deaths as clean as war allowed. "I take the shot in 30 seconds, Abdullahi said. "When he falls, you lead the assault on the flank. The perimeter will be disrupted to respond effectively." He settled into his shooting position, controlling his breathing, feeling his heartbeat slow to the rhythm of the kill. 20 years. 6 to 7 casings on his necklace. One more shot and his legacy would be complete. The Americans would withdraw from Somalia within months. He could feel it. This battle, this day, was the turning point, and he would be the one to turn it. What Abdullahi couldn't see was Marcus Coleman moving through the shadow of the building behind him. The blue door had led Marcus here, emerging impossibly from a closet that should have opened onto brick. The phantom soldier had done his work, positioning the pieces for the final act. Now it was up to Marcus to choose how that act would end. He could see the sniper clearly, the weathered profile, the milky blind eye, the scope pressed to the good one. He could see Omar beside him, the runner who had been given life and was now preparing to deal death. Marcus raised his weapon. 2 targets, easy shots. He could end them both before they ever knew he was there. It was the tactical choice, the military choice, the choice any soldier would make. But something held his fire. The same something that had held it in the courtyard when Omar had run. The same something that made Marcus different from other soldiers the Thing Prophet had recognized and the Phantom had tried to explain. Instead of shooting, Marcus spoke. "Lower your weapon." Abdullahi's body went rigid. He hadn't heard anyone approach. That was impossible. His hearing was as sharp as his shooting eye, honed by decades of survival. And yet an American soldier was standing behind him, weapon aimed, voice steady. Omar started to reach for his own rifle. "Don't," Marcus said. "I'm faster than you, and we both know it." Omar's hand stopped. Abdullahi remained motionless, but he spoke without turning. "If you were going to kill us, we would already be dead." "That's true. Then what do you want?" It was a fair question. Marcus wasn't entirely sure himself. He had come here to prevent Prophet's death, but now that he was here, something else was emerging, something that felt like purpose, like destiny, like the reason all those impossible doors had opened for him. "I want to understand," Marcus said slowly. "I want to know why you're still fighting when you know you can't win. The Americans have helicopters and Rangers and Delta Force. You have old rifles and homemade explosives. The mathematics don't work." Abdullahi finally turned, lowering his rifle, but not setting it down. His one good eye examined Marcus with something that might have been respect. "You're the one who spared my spotter. He was running away. He wasn't a threat, and now he leads fighters against your brothers. Do you regret the mercy?" Marcus considered the question carefully. Below them, gunfire continued. Prophet continued to direct the defense. The battle continued to rage without any awareness that its outcome was being decided in this broken restaurant between a sniper and a recruit. "No," Marcus said finally. "I don't regret it, but I need to understand, what are you fighting for? Really fighting for? Because I don't think it's Mohammed Ideed, and I don't think it's politics. Something else drives a man to become what you are. A pint of sweat saves a gallon of blood." George S. Patton. For a long moment, Abdullahi said nothing. Then, slowly, he reached up and touched the necklace of spent casings around his neck. "My family," he said. "Wife, 3 children. Killed in 1991, during the clan wars that followed Bari's fall. Bullets and machetes. They found my youngest, my daughter, 3 days later, hidden in a well. She died of dehydration, waiting for help that never came." Marcus felt the words like physical blows. He had asked for understanding. Now he was receiving it. "I'm sorry." "Are you? Your country helped arm the warlords who killed them. Your country gave weapons to Ideed when he fought the communists. Now you call him an enemy and send soldiers to kill him. But my family is still dead. My country is still broken. And all your Rangers and helicopters cannot bring back my daughter." Marcus had no answer. What could he say? That America was trying to help. That the UN mission was humanitarian? The words felt hollow, even in his own mind. Wars were never as simple as the briefings made them seem. The good guys and bad guys blurred together until all that remained was suffering infinite, equalizing suffering that didn't care which flag you saluted. "Then we're both trapped," Marcus said quietly. "You fight because you've lost everything and fighting is all you have left. I fight because someone told me it was the right thing to do, and I believed them. Neither of us chose to be here, not really. And neither of us is going to win." Abdullahi's eye widened slightly. This was not the response he expected from an American. The young ones usually spoke in slogans: freedom, democracy, liberty. They believed in their cause with the intensity of those who had never truly suffered. But this one was different. "What's your name?" Abdullahi asked. "Marcus. Marcus Coleman." Marcus. The sniper tasted the name. From the Latin. It means dedicated to Mars, the god of war. "Did you know that?" "No. Your parents named you for war before you were ever born. Perhaps that is why you find yourself here, in this moment, speaking with an enemy instead of killing him. Omar shifted uncomfortably. We should finish this. The attack. Be silent. Abdullahi's voice was soft, but carried absolute authority. Omar fell silent. The sniper returned his attention to Marcus. You could have killed us both. You still could. Why don't you? It was the question Marcus had been asking himself since the moment he spoke instead of shooting. The answer emerged slowly, like a shape forming in fog. Because I'm tired of death, Marcus said. I killed for men today, the first I've ever killed. Their faces are in my head now, and they're never leaving. I can feel them watching me, waiting for me to become someone who kills without thinking, without caring. And I don't want to become that person. Not even in war. Not even when the enemy is real and the threat is genuine. He paused, surprised by his own words. You've killed 6 to 7 soldiers. When does it stop? When do you have enough casings on that necklace? 100? 1,000? When does the debt get paid? For the first time, something cracked in Abdullahi's weathered face. The armor that had protected him for 20 years developed a hairline fracture, invisible but fatal. It doesn't, he whispered. The debt never gets paid. I killed my first man when I was 16, a soldier who burned my village. I thought killing him would bring peace. Instead, it brought hunger. The more I killed, the hungrier I became. And now, he looked at the necklace in his hand, seeing it perhaps for the first time as what it really was, a chain binding him to an endless cycle of vengeance. The phantom soldier appeared between them, visible to all three. Omar gasped and scrambled backward, but Abdullahi and Marcus simply watched. They had both seen him before. They had both been touched by whatever force he represented. The choice is now, the phantom said. Marcus, you can kill them and return to your brothers. The perimeter will hold. Many Americans will survive, but you will become what you fear, a killer who no longer questions his kills. He turned to Abdullahi. Or you can lower your weapon and let this end differently, not with more blood, but with understanding. The first step in a journey that neither of you will live to see completed. What journey? Abdullahi asked. Peace, the phantom replied. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. The seed that begins here will grow into something neither of you can imagine. If you let it. The phantom began to fade. Choose, but choose quickly. The battle waits for no man. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Sun Tzu. In the end, the choice was made by circumstance. An RPG fired from the second team. Marcus's Rangers hadn't reached streak toward the American perimeter. Prophet saw it coming. He had always seen death coming, and this time, instead of stepping aside, he stepped forward. The rocket struck him center mass. The explosion threw his body 20 feet. When the dust cleared, Staff Sergeant Raymond Washington lay still on the bloody ground, smoke rising from his ruined armor. Marcus saw it happen through the window of the restaurant. He was already running before his mind processed what his eyes had witnessed. The conversation with Abdullahi, the phantom's words, the choice that remained unmade, all of it became static as he burst through the door and sprinted toward the man who had become more than a mentor. The enemy fire that should have cut him down didn't come. Later, he would wonder about that. Later, he would understand that Abdullahi had lowered his rifle and watched him go. But in that moment, there was only Prophet. The old warrior was still alive when Marcus reached him barely. Blood poured from wounds that no medic could heal. His massive frame seemed smaller now, diminished by the violence that had been done to him. But his eyes were clear, and when he saw Marcus, he smiled. Told you, Prophet gasped. Told you I saw it coming. 3 months of watching myself die. God, so I was looking forward to it. No. Marcus pressed his hands against the wounds, trying to hold the blood inside. No. You can't. Hush, baby face. Prophet's hand found Marcus's arm with surprising strength. This is how it's supposed to be. I saw it. The man in the old uniform. He showed me. If I die here, now, something changes. Something important. I don't care about important. I care about you. Prophet's voice was fading. You're what's important. You're the one who talks to enemies instead of killing them. You're the one who sees the doors that shouldn't exist. You're going to do things, Marcus, things that matter. But first, you had to learn. And the only way to learn was to lose. To understand that war takes everything, even the people who prepare you for it. Around them, the battle continued. Rangers took up positions to cover their fallen sergeant. Medics rushed forward with equipment that would prove useless. The perimeter held barely as the enemy assault lost its coordination. Marcus was only distantly aware of any of it. His world had contracted to the dying man in front of him and the words that man was struggling to speak. "My son," Prophet whispered. "I wrote him a letter. The chaplain has it. But if you ever see him, if you ever get the chance, tell him his father was proud of him. Tell him the army took his dad, but it gave him a brother. You, Marcus, you're his brother now. Look after him when I can't. I will." The words came out choked. "I promise." "Good." Prophet's eyes were closing. "Good boy. Good soldier. Good, man." His breathing slowed. Stopped. Started again, weakly. "Can you see him, Marcus? The one in the old uniform. He's here. He's taking me somewhere. Somewhere warm. Somewhere." Staff Sergeant Raymond Washington, 18 years in service, survivor of Panama and the Gulf, died on a dusty street in Mogadishu with a recruit's hand holding his. The phantom soldier stood beside them. Marcus could see him clearly now. Could see that he was not alone. Other figures gathered behind him, dozens of them. Soldiers from wars ancient and modern, all watching the transition with something that looked like reverence. "He joins us now," the phantom said. "As I joined those who came before, the chain continues, the purpose passes on." Prophet's body was still and empty, but Marcus swore he could see something rising from it, a shimmer, a suggestion, a presence that gathered itself and took its place among the watching dead. The new spirit turned and looked at Marcus one final time, and then, as a group, the assembled ghosts pointed toward the restaurant where Abdullahi still waited. "The choice," their gesture said, "is still yours. Suffer, and then suffer more. That's what life is about." David Goggins, the sun set over Mogadishu in a blaze of crimson and gold, the same colors as fire, the same colors as blood. The battle had not ended, but it had shifted. The American forces, battered but not broken, began their long march out of the city under cover of darkness. Malaysian and Pakistani armored vehicles arrived to evacuate the wounded. The dead were carried with honor, and Marcus Coleman, who had entered this day as a trembling recruit, walked out as something else entirely. He did not speak of the phantom soldier or the blue doors or the conversation with the sniper. Some truths, he understood now, were too strange for official reports. Instead, he spoke of prophet, of a warrior who had sacrificed himself to save his brothers, of a mentor who had seen his own death coming and faced it with open arms. The military gave prophet a medal. Marcus knew it wasn't enough. Nothing would ever be enough. 3 weeks after the battle, Marcus received a letter from prophet's son. The young man, 17, angry, grieving, had read his father's final words and wanted to understand. The correspondence that followed with Spaniards would become a friendship, would eventually become the brotherhood prophet had asked Marcus to build. The army never knew that their relationship began with the dead man's final wish. Some chains are forged in blood, and those chains are the strongest of all. Marcus also received another letter, this one unexpected, forwarded through military intelligence from an address in Kenya. It was written in English, careful and formal, and it was signed simply, Ada Hassan. To Marcus Coleman, the letter began, "The one who spoke instead of shooting. I have left Mogadishu. The fighting continues without me, as it will continue long after you and I are both forgotten. But I wanted you to know, I did not fire my rifle after we spoke. I watched you run to your fallen sergeant, and I chose to lower my weapon. This does not make me your ally. It does not make us friends. But perhaps it makes us something else, two men who glimpsed a different possibility, who understood for one moment that the cycle of blood can be broken if someone has the courage to break it. The phantom soldier appeared to me again that night. He said you would understand what that means. I hope he was right. Live well, young warrior. Remember us when you grow old in a land at peace, and know that your mercy, foolish as it seemed planted seeds, you will never see grow. Perhaps that is enough. Perhaps, in the mathematics of war, that is everything." Marcus read the letter 3 times. Then he folded it carefully and placed it in the same pocket, where prophet's photograph of his son now lived, next to the picture of his sister Destiny, next to the single unfired round he had found where the phantom soldier disappeared. He had asked for understanding. He had received something more, a glimpse of what war could become if soldiers on both sides could remember their humanity even in the worst moments of combat. The official history of October 3rd to 4th, 1993 recorded the battle as a tactical failure, 19 Americans dead, hundreds of Somalis killed, the mission objectives never achieved. But Marcus knew a different history, one that would never appear in any textbook. The history of a recruit who froze at the moment of his first kill. The history of a sniper who discovered that 6 to 7 deaths had not filled the void in his heart. The history of a phantom soldier who had been guiding warriors toward better choices for longer than any nation had existed. And somewhere in the space between moments, in the gap where decisions haven't been made yet the door remained open, blue and patient and waiting. For the next soldier who would need to find a different path. For the next warrior who would speak instead of shooting. For the next moment when mercy would triumph over mathematics and a single choice would ripple through time to touch lives not yet born. Prophet had asked Marcus to be better. Abdullahi had reminded him that all soldiers are human. The Phantom had shown him that even death is not the end of purpose. Now Marcus carried all of those lessons forward into a future he could not predict but was no longer afraid to face. The recruit who rewrote history did not do it with bullets or bravery alone. He did it with the simple, terrifying, world-changing decision to see his enemies as something other than targets. And in that decision, glory found a new definition, one that had nothing to do with medals or memorials, and everything to do with the quiet courage of understanding. Years later, when journalists and historians would ask about that day in Mogadishu, Marcus would always give the same answer. I learned that war is terrible, but I also learned that inside that terror, there are moments of extraordinary grace. Moments when enemies recognize each other as human beings. Moments when choosing mercy costs everything and gives back even more. If you want to understand war, don't study the battles. Study those moments. Study the soldiers who made different choices, who opened doors that shouldn't exist, who followed phantom guides toward something better. That's where history actually changes. That's where the dead teach the living how to survive. The interviewer would always ask the same follow-up. Do you ever see the phantom soldier anymore? And Marcus would smile the same knowing smile Prophet had worn on the day they met and say, only when something important is about to happen. Only when there's a choice that matters. He's out there, watching, waiting. He'll appear when you need him. But here's the secret. You don't need to see him to hear his message. Just listen. Just stop in the middle of the chaos and ask yourself, what would a hero do? Not a soldier, not a warrior, a hero. The answer is always the same. The answer is always mercy. The true soldier fights not because he hates what is in front of him, but because he loves what is behind him. G.K. Chesterton, what you have witnessed is not fiction. It is the truth that exists in the space between history and legend, the story they don't teach in military academies because it cannot be measured or quantified. Somewhere, right now, a young soldier is facing the same choice Marcus faced, to kill or to understand, to follow orders blindly or to find a higher purpose. That soldier carries no weapon more powerful than their conscience. And if they are very lucky, if they keep their eyes open and their heart willing, they might catch a glimpse of a figure in an old uniform, pointing toward a door that shouldn't exist, offering a path that no map can show. Glory is not the absence of fear. It is the presence of purpose greater than fear. Prophet found that purpose in sacrifice. Abdullahi found it in lowering his rifle. Marcus found it in speaking when silence would have been easier. What will you find? The door is open. It has always been open. It is waiting for you to walk through. We make war that we may live in peace. Aristotle.